Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
At 9 minutes before 8 is the time. We'll come back to our conversation concerning Prince William and the rather unheralded comments he gave in just a moment. But let's look forward, let's look to the future, and let's look to when schools, colleges and universities in this country will be able to apply for funding to offer worldwide study and work opportunities. Details now from Conservative MP and Universities Minister Michelle Donelan, who joins me now. How do they get this money and what's the thinking behind it? Good morning, Minister.
Good morning. So this is basically the new scheme to replace Erasmus. Some of the key differences are it's international in scope, so students will be able to go anywhere across the globe. And the technical part as to how they get the money, well, it's starting from September. It's for the next academic year, and that's just the first year that we're running it. And these will be life-changing opportunities that students will engage in. For higher education, we've reduced the amount of time that they can go away from right the way down to 4 weeks, because we know that's a factor for widening that participation. And we're investing a lot more money in ensuring that students from deprived backgrounds don't have any financial barriers so that they can relish these opportunities, just like those students that were on the whole more affluent in nature, mainly, that were participating in Erasmus.
OK, so to give a practical example, so my listeners can really get their head around it, if you would, Minister, a young man or a young woman in this country could go to where, to do what, for how long? Just so they get a rough framework of the idea behind it.
Yeah, so from today, the bids open so that universities, schools or colleges will put in their bids for how many they would like to be able to go overseas and to what countries. And they'll be having those conversations, if they've not already, with students about what those opportunities are and saying, please apply to us if you would like to do this. And those exchanges will start from September this year. Some of them, as I said, will be from 4 weeks onwards for higher education, right the way up to an entire year. And they'll be studying or working. OK.
And for anybody interested, they should contact their school or university. Is that the route forward, Minister?
It definitely is. Right. Those university, schools and colleges should be communicating that, but if they've not, definitely knock on that door and say, are you participating in the Turing scheme? Because we want to. It's a fantastic opportunity. OK,
it's the Turing scheme, just so my listeners can be aware of that. Just while I have the benefit on the line and we're talking about universities, when do you imagine students will be able to return to their campuses up and down the country?
So from January, we managed to get back those students on the critical key worker courses, the likes of medicine, allied healthcare, teacher training, social work. From this week, we've also enabled those students on practical and creative courses, so right away from art through to engineering and STEM, etc., to go back. And the rest we will be reviewing at Easter based on the data. As a government, we want to get them back as soon as we possibly can, but it has to be when it is deemed safe from our advice from the Public Health England, from the CMO, from SAGE and those experts. And just to be clear, it's not the face-to-face teaching that we're concerned about. That remains extremely low risk. What it is it's that mass movement of students back that we want to control.
Do you not think in many instances students are worthy of some kind of payment due to this disruption, not caused by the government, of course, but due to the disruption caused by the pandemic?
I think that it has been a really difficult and challenging time for students and continues to be so. Universities have worked hard to try and mitigate some of those problems. So has the government. But as you say, the pandemic really has, yes, I would say, disproportionately had an impact on students. We have set up additional money for hardship, so 70 million just for this financial year, on top of the 256 million that we unlocked to enable students who are impacted financially to be able to get that money into their pocket in real terms. And if there are students listening or parents of students that are in financial hardship, I would urge them to go to their university to access those funds, including international students and postgraduate students.
But you'll be aware in Northern Ireland, students will be getting a £500 payment from, obviously, the devolved government, as was revealed last month. Shouldn't the same be afforded to English students?
Rather than dilute money across the board to all students, but that said, I do appreciate that every student has had a challenging time. What our strategy has been is to focus on getting money into the pockets of those that have been financially disadvantaged and in a way that has produced hardship. So the average payment that comes from a university from student hardship, UK, the largest sector body representative, estimates is about £1,000. And we think it's better to put more money into those students that are particularly struggling financially than across the board. And that's been our strategy to date.
Is it fair that in some instances students have been charged for accommodation when they're not actually there?
So I agree with you. This is one of the things that has been particularly unfair because of the pandemic. So what we've done is we've urged accommodation providers to give that refund. We've seen that happen with so many universities up and down the country, large accommodation private providers like the likes of Unite. Now, that is a lot harder for a landlord that may have one or two properties and their family relies on that income. And that's, again, why we put that hardship money there, so that if a student is paying for accommodation, but they're living at home and their parents are also charging them because they've been furloughed and the pressures are there on the family, then they can go to their university and access that hardship money. And above all, we want to get students back as soon as we can, but it has to be safe.
Might I just take you into a couple of other areas, if that's all right, Minister? Might I ask you, as a young woman, do you feel safe on Britain's streets?
So I agree with the Met Commissioner on this. The incident that's happened, which is absolutely awful, and my heart goes out to Sarah's family and friends, is exceptionally rare. But that said, we've seen an outpour on social media and on the news of women sharing their stories of not feeling safe.
Do you mind my asking, and please tell me if I'm prying, have you ever felt threatened or intimidated or harassed on the streets, Minister?
Well, I have, but I don't really want to make this about me. But I would say that on the whole, our streets, are safe. We do have low rates of crime, but we are addressing this problem as well. We're well on our way to getting the 20,000 additional police officers. We have committed 100 million to violence against women and girls services. And importantly, later this year, we will be launching a strategy on violence against women and girls. So this is something that the government is focused on. We are listening to the stories that are coming out. And I'm sure that my colleagues in the Home Office will continue to do that, as Pretty pointed out yesterday. OK. And lastly, in the House of Lords, Baroness Jenny Jones says she might suggest a curfew for men after 6 p.m. Would you support that, Minister? So I won't support any curfew that would curtail freedom of women or men. And it doesn't really get to the heart of the problem. And we also need to be careful we don't get into a blame game against men. The majority of men are not predators, in fact. And we need to keep reinforcing that, not taking away from the endless stories that women have shared. We need to get to the heart of the problem rather than masking it. And we should all be able to walk on the streets or go out or meet friends, including late at night, and feel safe being able to do that.
Grateful for your time. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Conservative MP and Universities Minister Michelle Donelan joining us here on LBC. 1 minute to 8. Brian in Bushy, come back to our conversation about the royal family. I'll just give you one of those two questions. Do you think it's a racist family, as William was asked? Good morning.
No. Good morning, Nick. No, I don't believe they're racist at all. And the thing that troubles me is, I don't know which way it was round, but Meghan and Harry both had different views. One, before they got married, said they believe in, about the colour of the baby.
Yes, that's right.
And then one said about when the baby